was one of the most brutal conflicts in human history, surpassed only by the likes of its sequel, the real war to end all wars, except for all the wars to come after. Combined, a total of nearly 100 million people were killed during both of these wars, which was a very significant percentage of the world population at the time, as there were only about 1 billion people on the entire planet. And yet, despite the Second World War being a direct result of the First, we don't often think about the First. World War II is everywhere. Books, movies, 3 separate Call of Duties. World War II still lives on in our modern world just by how much we still care about it. But World War I? It's the forgotten war. To most people, the Great War's legacy is solely its contribution to the Second. Now I'm telling you all this to set the tone, to make you understand the environment of the trenches, and to properly introduce you to one of the best horror games of this year. That game is Amnesia The Bunker. Amnesia is an old franchise at this point. It cemented itself as what any horror game should strive for. And yet I'd never played an Amnesia game before. The setting of the First World War has always been quite interesting to me, and the idea of a horror game set during an already horrifying period in history sounded, well, quite interesting. And thus, I took the plunge. We are quickly introduced to both the war as well as the mechanics of the game as we take control of Henri Clement, a French soldier on the Western Front. The Germans are on the offensive as they are attempting to overrun the French position. We manage to reach the trench, but the Germans are close behind. We learn how to use the weapons we will be using throughout the rest of the game, such as the revolver, but eventually reach a dead end. Poison gas grenades are thrown into the trench, and we begin to suffocate. But, luckily for us, we are saved by our only friend in this hell, Augustin Lambert. Later, we are sent out on patrol, where we find Lambert stranded in a deep crater. We attempt to rescue him, give him some water, but as we carry our friend across the bloody mud field, we are spotted by the Germans. A bright light soars across the sky before impacting the ground. And next thing we know, we wake up in the bunker. We have no idea what has happened, why we're here, or what happened to Lambert. And soon, we discover that we are not alone.
Is someone there? I am we. Thought I was the last one. We're trapped down here. The rat fucking officers ran and blew the exit behind them.
No, I don't mean him. I meant him. And so we learn that as we attempt to escape the bunker, we are in fact being hunted. Now then, with that dramatic intro out of the way, let's actually get into the game. As you might imagine, your main objective is to escape. However, the exit is currently not much of an exit. Luckily for you, the last sorry bastard who tried to escape has left some instructions for you. Find the dynamite in the arsenal, and find the ignition lever in the Roman tunnels. Of course, this is a lot easier said than done. First problem is the fact that there's an emergency lockdown. Now there is this handy valve we can turn to lift the gates, but unfortunately we'll have to find a new one. The replacement valve can be found in the mission storage room, but we'll need a code. In fact, every locker needs a code. And by now you might have figured out the pattern. In order to obtain one of the necessary items, you'll have to first obtain another item, restore power to a certain area, open up a blocked door, etc. All of this can usually be done in numerous different ways. Experimentation is the name of the game. For example, this door at the start of the game can be opened by shooting the lock off. Of course, guns aren't known for being the quietest. Alternatively, you can use this heavy rock to break the lock. Of course, there's just one little issue. Our hunter is persistent, fast, and smart. He uses these holes in the wall to travel throughout the bunker, and these holes are in nearly every room. Every small noise can be a potential death sentence, and you won't be able to take the quiet route every time. Now then, you might think that there's no way to fight the beast. And there isn't. However, there are ways of keeping him at bay. The main way being specified by this lovely message here. The lights don't guarantee safety, but they'll give you an opportunity, as when they turn off, well, let's just say it'll be a lot harder to maneuver around the bunker when the beast is literally breathing down your neck. Of course, the generator needs fuel, and that fuel is scarce. You will have to creep around in the dark, but having as much time as possible in the light will make your job a lot easier. But there are other ways of defending yourself. Shooting the beast won't hurt it, but it will stun it for a short time. Do this 3 times and it will run off. It will return shortly, of course, but you'll have an opportunity to escape. Along with that, the beast will avoid poison gas and fire. You might think that locking the doors will protect you. If you thought that, then you're an idiot. The beast can break through wooden doors, and while he can't break metal doors, he'll find a way around them. The beast isn't the only threat, however, as there's also giant, disgusting rats. They will usually congregate around the corpses left by the beast. They might seem harmless, but they're not. Not only does their noise attract the beast, but they also pack a serious punch themselves. Now, the only safe area in the entire bunker is the safe room. Surprising, I know. This is the only place in the entire game where you can feel safe, rest, calmly plan your expeditions, and fuel the fuelaholic generator, and listen to that delicious music. Fuck. All of these factors combine to create a perfect balance of having to move quickly to make use of your time in the light, while also having to take it slow, as rushing things will inevitably draw the beast to you. It's a constant cycle of scouting, exploring, trying to figure out what to do, gathering resources, and sneaking back to the safe room to fuel the generator again. Now, all of this, as you can probably guess, is absolutely terrifying. Sneaking around the bunker while the beast is actively hunting you is incredibly tense, especially as the game forces you into taking risks, forcing you to make noise as you attempt to go deeper into the bunker. All of this is made even worse by the fantastic sound design. The sound of muffled gunshots coming from the surface, which almost sound like the footsteps of the beast. The sound of the beast crawling through the walls. The subtle music that kicks in when the lights go out. It all combines to drive your anxiety even further through the roof. The atmosphere is nightmare fuel. And the tension is thick, which, now that I think about it, would explain the slow running speed. However, it's not all nightmares and hellfire, as there are some areas where the game falls just a bit short. Now, while the game is horrific in both gameplay and atmosphere, the tension is lessened slightly by the fact that sometimes you'll have to hide for extended periods of time. Now, this is mostly just a personal preference of mine, but I still think it's worth mentioning. Personally, I find that hiding under a bed for minutes on end does become a bit boring after a while. And once something gets boring, it also lessens the fear. Now, this isn't a major issue, as for the most part you won't have to hide for too long, and you will have to move eventually, but sometimes the beast is extra persistent, which can make it take a while for you to find an opening to move. But, in a way, the fact that there's nothing that forces you to move creates a different kind of fear. You'll never be forced to leave your hiding spot, but you obviously won't accomplish anything by shitting yourself under a bed. The second issue I have is more objective. Dying not only isn't much of a punishment, but at times it can even be beneficial. Let me explain. As I've told you before, resources are scarce, specifically fuel. You want to spend as much time in the light as possible, but the game doesn't directly tell you what to do. This means that you'll have to figure out where to go and what to do by trial and error. Now, this isn't actually much of an issue in my opinion. In fact, I like that the game forces you to think, to figure things out on your own. However, this means that you might accidentally waste quite a bit of time, which in turn means that you'll have wasted a bunch of fuel, which means that your next expedition into the bunker will be made a lot harder once the lights go out. But this can easily be averted by dying. Dying resets you back to your last save, and you'll probably have more fuel, which means that dying is often more resource efficient. Oh, and the final boss is bullshit. Spoilers, obviously. So if you don't want to know about the final boss, then skip to here. So, after blowing up the exit, you'll fall through the floor. You'll crawl through a couple tunnels before you find a large open cave with a series of interconnected bridges. Some of these bridges are made of wood and can be blown up, some of them are made of stone, and thus can't be blown up. Duh. Now, the beast obviously will find you, and there's two ways that the boss fight can go. Either you got your hands on the rabbit plush, which you can use to distract the beast before blowing up one of the wooden bridges under him, which will cause him to plummet to his death. But if you don't have the bunny, well, you'll be forced to lure the beast to one side, then run all the way to the other side so you can slowly push these boxes over to this wall, rinse and repeat until you're done and you can jump over the wall. Not only is it tedious, but it's also surprisingly hard. Now, to be fair, you'll probably be able to take the plush with you, unless your inventory is full. So, word to the wise, even if your inventory is full, take the bun with you. And the last issue I have is, remember that hole in the safe room? The hole appears partway through the game, and at first it's quite a terrifying discovery, but the beast never uses it. You're still completely safe within the safe room, as long as you lock the doors, that is. Which, once you realize that, obviously also lessens the fear a little bit. However, you can solve this on your own, with mods. Do you like that segue? Modding is one of the most powerful tools available to a community, and it's one of the easiest ways for a developer to improve their game. It allows the community to fix issues with the game, tailor the game to their personal preferences, increase the difficulty, or recreate Doom. You want the beast to be even more difficult? Try the aggressive stalker mod. Want to change the color grading of the game to be more cinematic? There's a mod for that. Want to replace the music? You can. Bored of the bunker? There's custom stories too. Modding increases the replayability of a game beyond anything the actual developers could do. It is a seemingly small aspect of the game's success, but it's far more powerful than people realize. But there's of course one more aspect to the game that we haven't talked about. The story isn't told to you directly. Instead, it's told in the background, as you would expect from an Amnesia game. You're told the story through the environment, and of course, notes. As we find notes from our fellow soldiers, we slowly piece together the horrors that consumed the bunker and its residents. The event that triggered all the horror in the bunker was the discovery of the Roman tunnels. At first, the discovery seemed to be a useful tool to surprise attack the Germans. However, the soldiers slowly began hearing screams in the night, feeling an unexplainable dread coming from the tunnels, even hallucinating shadows wandering through a dark void. This eventually caused some of the soldiers to sabotage the tunnels, flooding the entrance. After this, the high-ranking officers became increasingly strict, as you might imagine. Eventually, Henry and Lambert play a game of dice to decide who will go out on patrol.
Beat that roll, my friend.
There you have it, huh?
Ah, fate's a bastard. I'm on patrol tonight then. C'est la vie.
Henry cheated during this game, however, which he would later feel an intense amount of guilt over after Lambert failed to return. We can discover this through reading notes written by Henry. He would later go out in search of Lambert. This brings us to the section where we attempt to rescue Lambert before the Germans found us. However, you might be wondering how we were brought back to the bunker. Well, it was Lambert. He somehow managed to rescue us, despite the fact that a moment ago he told us that he couldn't feel his legs.
I can't walk. My leg.
This might seem a little bit odd, however, there is an explanation, which we discover once we make our way into the Roman tunnels. We can find a small hidden tunnel leading into the crater where we initially found Lambert. Remember the water we gave him? Well, it turns out that it wasn't water. You might have put the pieces together by now. I'd have to ask some serious questions if you haven't. The monster hunting us is actually our only friend, which is confirmed when we distract the beast with a small bunny plush which Lambert had bought for his son. I think it's the little details that make the story work. While we don't spend much time with Lambert, we do grow to like his character as we figure the story out. Or at least I did. Lambert is already quite likable, as tends to happen when somebody saves your life, but while he isn't present for the rest of the game, we still do learn quite a bit about him. As I mentioned, he has a son back home, along with a wife, which we learn from this nice little picture. Along with that, we can find notes from Lambert. They start out simple, talking about Henry and the rabbit plush that Lambert lost while he was stuck in that crater. However, they eventually devolve as Lambert succumbed to his transformation. While it's certainly not the deepest or most inventive, Lambert's story is still quite interesting, and the game does do a good job of making us care for this character that we really only see for a couple scenes. Now, there's more to the plot than what I've told you, side stories that I haven't included, such as the crazy guy down in the Roman tunnels, but I'll just leave some things for you to discover. Overall, while the plot isn't too inventive or particularly great, it is well written and reasonably engaging, and that's really all a short game like this needs. Now, while I have my issues with this style of very indirect storytelling, personally I don't find stories told exclusively through notes to be very engaging, but despite that I do find the story to be quite interesting. It's quite terrifying reading through the notes as you slowly realize that all these soldiers were slowly going insane way before the beast ever even showed up. The beast was just the final nail in the coffin, really. And of course, the discovery that the beast is our only friend, well, that certainly recontextualizes the game in an interesting way. It's not exactly surprising that the beast was once human, after all, just look at it, but it is quite surprising to learn that the beast was your dear friend. I won't act like it's the most inventive plot twist ever, however I do think it works quite well. Now then, with all of that said, what did I think of the game as a whole? Well, it is absolutely terrifying. It is certainly one of the best horror games to come out recently, And it is a great example of what a horror game should strive for. Tension, horror, actually feeling scared by the monsters. Of course, the gameplay in general is great. Having to experiment, slowly figuring out exactly what you're supposed to do, it's quite engaging, I would say. And it is quite terrifying knowing that there's a slowly ticking time bomb in the background as the generator slowly loses power. Now, while I certainly have a couple small issues with the game, overall it is fantastic. So, if you haven't played Amnesia The Bunker, and you've gone through this whole review, then play it. Now, with all of that said, that concludes this review. Now, why don't you go do that whole subscribe thing? If you want, I'm not forcing you, I don't have a gun to your head. Not yet, anyways. And if you like this video, why don't you like it? Maybe comment. I don't know what you'd comment, but just comment something because the algorithm is a bitch. I also do movie reviews and such, if you're into that kind of thing. Bye, I guess.
Fly me to the moon so I can kick its fucking ass.